Order. Question number 5, James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by all of his government's policies?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he stand by his government's policy of giving taxpayer money to a handful of big companies to pay for their carbon pollution?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the member is referring to ensuring that there's some support for companies that face competition in the export markets because they don't have an ETS like we do, then yes, I support some protection for them.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he stand by his government's 2014 policy of giving $5.3 million worth of taxpayer-funded carbon credits to Methanex when that company made over $100 million in after-tax profits that year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the member is misrepresenting the position. We have assisted industries that are competitive internationally against overseas manufacturers who don't face ETS costs. They still face some costs, these industries, but we think it's fair that they're on a level playing field.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he stand by his government's policy in 2014 of giving $7.3 million worth of taxpayer-funded carbon credits to New Zealand Steel when its parent company made over $110 million in after-tax profits that year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think if the member wants to join the analysis of the previous question to this one, to New Zealand Steel, he'd be making the case that we'd be giving them a lot more.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Given that the profit margins of these companies exceed the value of the taxpayer-funded pollution credits by a factor of 15, how can he justify using taxpayer money to subsidise their carbon pollution?
The Right Honourable Prime
Speaker,
Minister.
we're not. Companies are in the emissions trading scheme. Some of the large companies that face international competition are put on a more level playing field. But, Mr. Speaker, in the end, they all pay some ETS charges along the way. The question is how quickly they can transition. But if we were to adopt what the member is saying, these companies would simply go out of business, relocate into another part of the world. Kiwis would lose their job, and it would be no better for the planet. It's a rather Neanderthal way of thinking about economics, if that's what the member wants to do.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Given that many New Zealand households and businesses are already doing their bit to reduce their carbon emissions, how does he justify using their taxpayer money to subsidise pollution from big industrial polluters?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're not doing that, and the there he talks about are the very people who work in those companies that would lose their job if we followed his policies.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Given that the purpose of an emissions trading scheme is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and that New Zealand's net greenhouse gas emissions have increased 13% since he took office, will he admit that his ETS policy has failed?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no.
Question number 6, Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question